There is a silent pain that almost no one confesses, that of being ignored. You speak and no one listens. You deliver and no one notices. You are present, but it is as if you had no weight in the environment. It is a strange feeling of transparency. You pass among people and return home with the impression that nothing of you remained. It is not absence of contact, it is absence of impact. And when this is repeated, two dangerous temptations arise: to exaggerate to be noticed, or to give up and retreat to never try again. Neither builds respect. The ancients knew this. Seneca said that whoever depends on the gaze of others lives as a slave, and Epictetus reminded us that what we control, in fact, is our conduct. Respect is not born from asking, complaining, or begging. Respect is a consequence, not a request. It is like a magnetic field, invisible but perceptible. Either you possess it or you don't, and it is built in layers, in the coherence between what you say and what you do, in the disciplined silence that precedes each word, in the act of putting order within yourself before wanting order around you. Perhaps you have already felt the frustration of doing the right thing and still not being taken seriously. At work, you deliver and someone else takes the credit. In the family, you are the last to be consulted. In friendships, you realize that your opinion only matters when it confirms what others have already decided. This wears you down. Many people at this point fall into the trap of reactivity, raise their voice, try to impose presence, respond on impulse, want to prove in one day what should have been built in months. And the result is always the same. Whoever needs to prove loses authority. Whoever reacts to everything yields control. Marcus Aurelius, who understood power and also humility, noted to himself that dignity is a posture, not a volume. Respect is not noise, it is density. You can enter a room without saying anything, and still everyone recognizes that your presence weighs. This is not a gift, it is training. It is an internal architecture made of clear limits, consistent discipline, and silent competence. It is the body that communicates before the mouth. It is the gaze that does not flee. It is the word that arrives after the thought, not before. This video is a map of this construction. We will go through the 7 levels of respect, a ladder that goes from the invisible to the admired. On each step, you will recognize attitudes that may be holding you back and, mainly, simple practices to cross the next stage. It is not a theory to collect beautiful phrases. It is an action plan. You will understand why attention is not respect, why tolerance is not approval, why being noticed is not the same as being heard, and why true admiration never comes from spectacle, but from integrity. Think of someone you truly respect. Not someone famous, someone close. Perhaps a colleague who doesn't promise too much and delivers what they say. A relative who doesn't get into gossip. A leader who doesn't need to humiliate anyone to coordinate. A friend who knows how to say no without blaming anyone for it. These people share 3 elements: limits, consistency, and competence. And as they mature, they gain a 4th element that almost no one trains: serenity. The more serene, the less reactive; the less reactive, the more respectable. It is a self-reinforcing circle. You may be at any point in this journey. Perhaps you feel invisible now. Perhaps you are already at the level where you are noticed, but not yet heard. Perhaps you are competent, but not consistent. Perhaps you have limits, but still get irritated easily. And this knocks down half the respect you build. That's okay. Here there is no judgment, there is direction. Respect is a personal and non-transferable ladder. No one can climb for you, but you also don't need to ask permission to climb. Just climb. What we are going to do together from now on is to look at each level with surgical honesty. At level 1, invisible, you will understand why your posture communicates before your mouth. At level 2, reactive, you will see how impulse sabotages authority. At level 3, with limits, you will see that saying no is a gesture of respect for yourself. At level 4, consistent, you will discover that reputation is medium term, not short. At level 5, competent, the weight of delivery speaks. At level 6, serene, imperturbable, calm becomes power. And at level 7, admired, you will understand why the truly respected do not ask for the stage. They illuminate the stage by the simple fact of being in the place. Before we continue, a simple invitation: subscribe to the channel. Here every week you will find practical guides to strengthen presence, mind, and conduct without magic formulas, only what works and remains. And tell me one thing in the comments. From which city are you watching this video? I want to have the dimension of where this community is reaching and how each script can serve you better in your context. Breathe, adjust your shoulders, straighten your neck, keep your gaze steady, without haste. Respect begins when the body decides to participate in the conversation. Let's go to the first step, the place where everyone, without exception, has been: the invisible. Level 1, the invisible. The first level of respect is the most silent and the most painful. It is the point at which you exist but do not weigh. You are there but you are ignored. No one asks what you think, no one notices when you arrive, no one feels when you leave. It is as if the world had decided that your presence is neutral, neither positive nor negative, just neutral, like a wall or a chair. But the problem does not start with people. It starts with you, because in fact, whoever feels invisible is almost always invisible to themselves. You don't listen to yourself. You interrupt yourself. You doubt your own ideas even before you pronounce them. And when this happens for too long, the body learns to shrink, the voice learns to ask for permission, and the gaze learns to avoid confrontation. The result is an emptied presence, and the world, which is just a mirror, returns the reflection, empty. Seneca said that no one is respected for being equal to others. And this is the first point. The invisible is the one who tries to blend in, the one who seeks security in conformity. You try to speak like others, think like others, dress and act like the group, hoping that the group will accept you. But the price of forced acceptance is the loss of identity. And no one respects someone who does not transmit their own contour. Imagine a work meeting where everyone gives their opinion and you, for fear of making a mistake, remain silent. In the end, you leave frustrated, feeling that no one listened to you, but also aware that you said nothing. This cycle is addictive. The more you omit yourself, the more the environment accustoms you to the role of supporting actor. And when you finally decide to express yourself, it is too late. No one expects anything relevant to come from you. It is cruel, but it is real. Epictetus taught that man begins to change when he understands what is under his control. And in the case of the invisible, there is something very simple under your control: posture. Before any word, it is posture that communicates. A direct gaze, an erect spine, a firm tone of voice. These gestures precede any argument. It is not about arrogance, it is about presence. The body needs to learn to say, "I am here," before the mouth says, "I want to speak." But there is another detail. Respect does not come from wanting to be noticed, but from becoming remarkable. It is a subtle difference, but it changes everything. Whoever wants to be noticed lives tense, comparing themselves, competing for space, begging for attention. Whoever becomes remarkable lives whole, focused on what they can offer. The invisible wants to prove that they have value. The remarkable only demonstrates value. A man who still lives at the level of invisibility needs to start small but firm. Speak once a day, even when the heart asks for silence. Look into the eyes of those who ignore him without confronting, only sustaining his own dignity. Do what he said he would do, even if no one is watching. These gestures do not change the world in one day, but they begin to change the reflection that the world returns. Because respect, in the end, is a matter of perception. The world believes in what you believe about yourself. How many times have you felt erased and instead of rising, preferred to disappear a little more? How many opportunities have you lost for fear of looking ridiculous, for not thinking you were enough, for avoiding being judged? These moments were not failures. They were warnings. Each of them is a chance to be born again for your own value. Marcus Aurelius once noted, "Stop asking what a good man is. Be one." At the level of invisibility, this means stopping asking yourself when others will see you, and starting to ask yourself what you do that makes you visible to your own eyes. The first step of respect is not to be heard, it is to listen to yourself. It is when you return to inhabit your own body, to honor your own presence, and to walk as someone who deserves to occupy space. You don't need to be the most beautiful, the richest, or the most intelligent. You just need to stop acting as if you were a passenger in your own life. While the invisible waits to be noticed, the respectable has already started to act. And it is this turnaround that takes us to the next stage, the one in which, finally, the world begins to see you, but not in the right way, because now you go from invisible to reactive. And it is at this point that many lose the respect they were beginning to build. Level 2, the reactive. When the invisible begins to awaken, the second level arises. And paradoxically, it is the most dangerous. It is the stage in which, for the first time, you want to be seen. And when you want to be seen, you start fighting for it. But the problem is that in this fight, the ego takes the wheel, and the respect you seek so much turns into a dispute for attention. The reactive is the one who finally speaks, but shouts too much, who has learned to defend themselves, but has not yet learned to contain themselves. He wants to show value, but does so by attacking, correcting, competing. Each criticism is a punch in the chest, each disagreement a threat, each silence a challenge. And when the soul lives in defense mode, respect becomes impossible, because no one respects someone who needs to prove all the time. Seneca said that anger is a passing madness, and that is exactly what defines this level, a temporary insanity that is born from the lack of being taken seriously. You spent so long being ignored that now, when someone interrupts you, it seems like they tore a piece of your dignity. But what you don't realize is that each reaction is a sign of emotional weakness, and respect moves away from those who have no self-control. Imagine a man trying to impose himself in a conversation. He speaks loudly, corrects every detail, tries to win by volume. Deep down, what he wants is recognition. But what he transmits is insecurity. And insecurity, the more it shouts, the more it gives itself away. The wise man speaks little but weighs a lot. The reactive speaks a lot but weighs little. Epictetus taught that it is not what happens that disturbs us, but what we think about what happens. The reactive does not understand this. He lives under the dominion of others, because any word, any gesture, any silence governs him. If they praise him, he grows. If they ignore him, he shrinks. His humor, peace, and even personal value fluctuate according to the environment. And such a person is not respected. He is manipulated. The second level of respect is the field where most remain trapped for life. It is the territory of justification, of "you don't know who I am," of "no one understands me." It is here that useless fights, endless debates, attempts to win with words, when what really convinces our attitudes arise. It is the moment when the search for respect turns into a spectacle. And ironically, the more you try to show strength, the more you reveal vulnerability. But there is something beautiful in this stage. It shows that the fire has already lit. The invisible did not react. The reactive feels. And feeling is the beginning of change. It is the body saying, "I exist." The challenge is to channel this energy into something productive, to transform impulse into direction, instinct into posture, anger into discernment. The transition begins in silence. Not the silence of someone who flees, but of someone who chooses when and why to speak. A truly strong man does not respond to everything. He measures the weight of each word because he understands that speaking less is not being silent. It is saving power. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his diaries, "You always have the power not to have an opinion about what you do not control." And it is this phrase that frees the reactive. To realize that reacting is giving control to the other, while remaining firm is taking it back. Think of how many times you have ruined something good by reacting too quickly. A misunderstanding, a crossed comment, a message answered in the heat of emotion. How many bridges burned because the need to be right was greater than the desire to maintain peace? Each of these situations is a practical lesson on how respect is lost. Respect does not live in the loud voice. It lives in the internal domain that prevents chaos from coming out of the mouth. The reactive needs to learn to endure the discomfort of not responding, to tolerate silence without trying to overcome it, to accept that not every provocation requires a response and that not every injustice deserves a stage. This is how the fire of anger turns into the light of clarity. And it is this light that opens the way to the next level, the moment when the individual stops fighting for space and begins to define their limits. Level 3, the with limits. After crossing the fire of impulse comes the level where respect begins, in fact, to be born. It is here that the individual learns something that seems simple but changes everything. To say no, and not only to others, to say no to himself, to his own urgencies, to automatic reactions, to old beliefs that made him try to please everyone. Respect grows on the border between what you accept and what you no longer tolerate. For a long time, you may have confused kindness with submission. You did favors you didn't want to do, listened to outbursts that drained your energy, tolerated jokes that diminished you, all in the name of peace, but a peace that cost your own dignity. Deep down, what you called being a good person was fear of losing approval, and whoever is afraid to displease is hardly respected. Seneca said that whoever accepts everything imposes respect on no one, because the world perceives, even unconsciously, when someone places themselves entirely before life. There is a silent force in someone who knows how far they can go. It is not arrogance, it is clarity. And this clarity, when cultivated, changes the way others treat you. And, more importantly, changes the way you treat yourself. Imagine a woman who has always been the support point of the family. She says yes to everything, takes care of her parents, helps her siblings, works overtime, and still tries to smile while carrying the weight of the world. No one notices the fatigue because she doesn't show it, until the day when, exhausted, she decides to refuse a simple request. "I can't today." And what happens? The others get irritated, find it strange, question it. But this discomfort is the birth of respect, because the border that was previously invisible now becomes visible. And every time someone sees a limit, they also see a person. Epictetus taught that it is not the thing itself that hurts you, but what you allow it to do to you. At the level of limits, this translates as follows: it is not what they ask you, it is what you accept. Each forced yes is a small betrayal of your own peace. Each honest no is a brick in the construction of respect. In everyday life, limits are not speeches. They are rituals of behavior. It is when you do not respond to work messages at 11 at night. It is when you end a conversation that has become disrespectful without justifying yourself. It is when you do not over-explain a decision because you understand that whoever deserves respect does not need to defend themselves all the time. These simple attitudes, repeated in silence, re-educate the environment around you. Think about it. The world does not respect those who talk about limits. The world respects those who live their limits. And living your own limits means choosing where to spend energy, time, and attention, and where not to spend any more. The mind that has learned to react now learns to delimit, and this change is visible. The gaze becomes firmer, the words more measured, the presence denser. It is at this point that respect begins to become palpable. But there is a subtle detail. Whoever establishes limits inevitably loses applause. Some will call you cold, others selfish. But over time, even those who criticize will adjust their tone when talking to you, because the limit, when it is real, imposes itself without violence. It is what Seneca would call quiet strength, the one that does not need to shout to be felt. And once you learn to protect your own space, the next step is to learn to sustain that space. It is no use setting limits if you are not constant in maintaining them. And that is what takes us to the next stage, the level of silent coherence, consistency. Level 4, the consistent. When you learn to define limits, respect begins to emerge. But it is still fragile, because the world, like people, needs to test if your limit is real. And it is here that many lose what they started to build. The fourth level is that of consistency, the moment when you stop being a promise and become a reference. Consistency is the cement of respect. Without it, the limit becomes just a speech. With it, it becomes identity. Being consistent is not being perfect. It is being predictably honest. It is when people know what to expect from you, because you yourself have already decided who you are. Seneca said that no wind is favorable to those who do not know where they are going. Consistency is, therefore, the map of direction. Without it, each praise distracts you and each obstacle diverts you. With it, even the silence of others becomes fuel. The respected is the one who, even without an audience, maintains the same standard of conduct. The modern world values brightness, but despises rhythm. We live surrounded by people who start everything with intensity and finish nothing with dignity. Consistency is almost revolutionary in this time of quick resignations. It does not shout, it does not show off, but it wins. Think of a man who decides to change something simple, his way of speaking. He realizes that when he gets angry, he speaks too loudly, loses control, and regrets it later. So he chooses to train silence for 30 days. In the first days, it is difficult. The tongue itches, anger asks for the stage. But he insists. A week later, people start to notice, you are different. It is not a miracle. It is repetition. Consistency creates a new, solid presence, impossible to ignore. It is respect being born in slow motion. Another example, a woman decides that she will no longer be late. Not because she wants to please others, but because she understood that being on time is a form of respect for herself and for others. In the beginning, no one notices. After a while, the entire environment adjusts to the new rhythm. People start arriving on time too, not out of obligation, but because her presence transmits seriousness. This is consistency in action, a behavior that becomes a mirror for others. Epictetus taught that excellence is not an act, it is a habit. And respect is born exactly from this, from small acts, repeated until they become part of the body. Consistency is an invisible discipline. No one applauds, but everyone feels when it is present. There is something powerful in someone who is predictable in a noble way. Not predictable out of boredom, but out of reliability. You trust the doctor who is always on time, the friend who always shows up, the colleague who always delivers. These people don't need to promise, just be there. And the curious thing is that the more consistent someone becomes, the less they need to talk about themselves. The world begins to speak for them. But there is a trap, confusing consistency with rigidity. Wise consistency is flexible. It allows you to change your opinion when there is learning, but never changes your posture for convenience. It is the difference between being stable and being stubborn. The stubborn clings to the ego, the consistent anchors to the purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be different from those who hurt you." Consistency is exactly that. staying true when the environment invites you to fall. It is continuing to be who you are, even when no one is watching. And at this point, respect ceases to be conquered and begins to be recognized. People start looking for your opinion, your example, your direction. And this takes us to the fifth level, when consistency meets result, the level of competence. Level 5, the competent. You have come this far, and that already puts you among few. Most people never pass the first 3 levels. By the way, tell me in the comments, in which of these levels do you believe you are now? Knowing where you are is the first step to knowing where you need to go. The 5th level is that of competence, the point at which respect ceases to be just moral and becomes technical. Here people listen to you not only because they trust who you are, but because they trust what you do. It is the stage of delivery, of excellence, of silent mastery. Until now, everything was internal: presence, limits, consistency. But at this level, respect begins to become visible in the results. It is when the world finally recognizes value, not by words, but by work. Seneca said that actions should speak louder than words and character louder than appearance. And that is exactly it. The competent does not talk about their own value, they show their own value in silence. In the work environment, everyone knows someone like that. That person who does not need to promote themselves because the results speak for them. They do not compete, do not justify themselves, do not dispute space. They just deliver. While others waste time saying what they are going to do, they have already done it. And the curious thing is that the more they deliver, the less they need to be defended. Competence creates a type of automatic respect, a respect that is independent of opinion. But this level is not limited to career. In personal life, there is also competence. It is the father who fulfills what he promises. It is the friend who does not fail when called. It is the person who proposes to change and really changes. These people inspire confidence because they are effective. And effectiveness, contrary to what many think, has nothing to do with haste. It has to do with clarity and discipline. Epictetus said, "Do not explain your philosophy, live it." And it is here that this becomes real. Competence is the living proof of philosophy in action. You stop being theoretical about yourself and become functional. Your life begins to function. But there is a delicate point. The competent needs to be careful not to become dependent on performance. Because there is a danger in being good. You start to think you need to prove it all the time. And without realizing it, you go back to spinning in the same cycle as the reactive, but with a more sophisticated veneer. The reactive gets irritated when they are ignored. The competent gets irritated when they are not recognized. Both still seek validation. The difference is that the competent needs to relearn what the invisible has already forgotten, that value does not depend on applause. A practical example, imagine a boss who, after years of effort, gains respect in the company for being the most prepared. But at the first mistake, he collapses because his value was in the image of perfection, not in the consistency of character. Another example, a woman who becomes a reference in what she does, but begins to measure her own value by the metrics of recognition. She delivers more, but wears herself out more too, until she realizes that the respect that comes from outside is unstable. What needs to be born now is internal respect, the one that is independent of applause. The true competent understands that respect is not a result, it is a reflection. He knows that he does not need to run after it because respect walks in the same direction as mastery. And mastery is not talent, it is repetition with soul. It is the craft done with patience, the gesture perfected 1,000 times, the humility to continue learning. When respect begins to be born from competence, the world changes position. People listen to you before you speak. Others observe how you act in the face of mistakes, not just successes. And at this point, an important transition arises. Respect already exists, but it needs to be protected. And there is only one way to protect it, not to be shaken by anything. That is where the next level comes in, perhaps the most serene, most silent, and most stoic of all, the level of the imperturbable. Level 6, the imperturbable. Getting this far is rare. Few understand that after competence comes something even more difficult, not to be shaken, because the world respects those who deliver, but bows before those who remain calm when everything collapses. Serenity is the apex of silent authority. The imperturbable is the one who has learned to dominate their own center. He does not react to what is small, does not argue with what is shallow, and does not rush in the face of what is urgent. He has already understood that respect, in its purest form, is the result of self-control. Whoever dominates what they feel, dominates everything. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by wars, betrayals, and pressures of an empire, wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not over events. Understand this, and you will find strength." It is the essence of this level. Life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a field of observation. The imperturbable is not cold. He is tempered. He feels everything, but does not let himself be dragged by anything. There is a strange peace in someone who no longer needs to prove anything. This person can be criticized, misinterpreted, provoked, and still remain whole. And the most curious thing is that respect increases exactly when they choose not to respond, because the silence of the wise weighs more than the justification of the insecure. A simple example. Think of a man who is being humiliated in public. Before, he would react. He would defend himself, raise his tone, get lost trying to show that he is right. Now he just breathes and observes. He knows that whoever tries to win an argument with shouts loses dignity in the process. In the end, he leaves, and the environment changes, not because he imposed fear, but because he imposed calm. His silence becomes a mirror of the chaos of others. Another example, a woman who, after years of living with criticism from her family, decides not to justify herself anymore. She does not try to convince anyone that her choices are good. She just lives, and, over time, even those who mocked begin to measure their own words before her. Because the imperturbable teaches without wanting to teach. His posture educates the environment. Epictetus said that the free man is the one who does not fear losing what does not depend on him. This is the heart of this level. Whoever frees themselves from the need to control opinions loses the fear of being misunderstood and gains the respect that no explanation could conquer. Serenity is an invisible but immense force. It confuses the aggressive, disarms the ironic, and silences the disrespectful. The imperturbable does not fight against chaos. He exhausts it with calm. But attention, serenity is not indifference. The indifferent closes, the serene elevates. The indifferent avoids the world. The serene understands it. The difference is in the intention. The serene does not flee to protect the ego. He observes to protect the soul. That is why the imperturbable is respected, not for dominating others, but for dominating himself. This level is the closest to the Stoic ideal. The body still feels, but the mind does not surrender. Pain arrives, but does not define. Criticism comes, but does not penetrate. It is here that respect transforms into an aura. There is no need to be feared or admired, just to be. The simple fact of existing in this state is already sufficient presence. And when someone reaches this point, something curious happens. People stop respecting only what he does and start respecting who he is. His presence becomes a symbol of integrity, and this opens the doors of the last step, the rarest and most silent, the level of the admired. Level 7, the admired. The last level of respect is not conquered, it is revealed. Getting this far has nothing to do with fame, power, or influence. It has to do with coherence. The admired is the one whose life has become so aligned with their values that even their silence teaches. He does not need a title, a stage, or status. The presence is enough. Admiration is the stage in which respect transforms into inspiration. People no longer just listen to him, they observe him, trying to understand how he lives. And the more natural the conduct, the stronger the impact. Because the admired is not trying to inspire anyone, he just is. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul is colored with the paints of thoughts. The admired is someone whose soul has been colored with serenity, discipline, and truth. Nothing in him is rehearsed. He does not talk about virtue, he breathes it. And this naturalness is what makes him so rare. Imagine a man who, after years of mistakes, falls and overcoming, has learned to speak little and act right. People trust him not because he demands respect, but because his gaze transmits firmness. When he speaks, there is a pause between the words. He has learned that weight does not come from volume. It comes from the silence between one sentence and another. And this silence, when born of integrity, is magnetic. Think of a woman who never needed to say she is strong. She just keeps calm when everything collapses, helps those in need without showing off, and without realizing it, becomes a reference, not by authority, but by presence. The admiration she awakens does not come from what she does, but from the way she does it. The admired has this effect. He does not impress, he inspires. The admired does not seek approval, but also does not despise anyone. He understands that arrogance destroys in seconds the respect that took years to be born. Therefore, he is kind but firm, understanding but not permissive. He knows how to listen to the fool without becoming a fool, knows how to live with the weak without losing strength. His presence adjusts the tone of others without needing to say anything. Deep down, the admired is the mirror of what everyone wants to be, but few have the courage to become. He is the living proof that true respect is not born of obedience. It is born of example. And it is curious, the more he matures, the less he talks about himself. He understood that integrity does not need to be disclosed. Whoever needs to show their own value does not yet possess it. The life of the admired has its own rhythm. He does not rush to arrive, nor despair to remain. Because he knows that genuine respect is organic, it grows at the right time, born of the right roots. While others try to impress, he just remains authentic. And therefore he is remembered, even in silence. Epictetus said that no one is free until they master themselves. And perhaps this is the true meaning of being admired, not being the most followed, the most feared, or the most loved, but the most free. Free from the need to prove, to respond, to compete. Free from the pride of being respected. The admired is not the one who reached the top, it is the one who stopped needing a top. He walks slowly, observes a lot, and speaks only what is necessary. And wherever he goes, the environment changes. Because the respect he carries is not a medal, it is an aura, the type of presence that even when it goes away, continues to echo. And it is at this point that the cycle closes, from the invisible who wanted to be noticed, to the admired who no longer needs to be seen. If you have come this far, you have already realized that respect is not something that is conquered at once. It is something that is built in silence, layer by layer, until it becomes part of your own essence. It does not come from others, it comes from within, and when the interior matures, the exterior only reflects. Respect is, in fact, a form of energy. It is born invisible, grows in daily decisions, and flourishes when conduct and word walk in the same compass. Each level of this journey represents an internal transition, from fear to firmness, from reactivity to calm, from the search for attention to the presence that inspires. Think about the path we have traveled, from the invisible, who begged to be noticed, to the reactive, who confused shouting with strength, to the one who learned to set limits and discovered for the first time the value of preserving himself. Then came consistency, the pillar of everything. Competence, which transformed respect into result, serenity, which made calm a form of power, and finally, the admired, the one who no longer seeks respect because he has become respect. Seneca said that no one is more worthy of admiration than the one who dominates himself, and perhaps that is what this entire journey teaches, that true respect is not to be feared, applauded, or followed. It is to have peace when laying your head on the pillow knowing that you have not betrayed who you are. Imagine if we all applied this in everyday life. Less need to prove, more presence. Less dispute of voices, more firmness of conduct. Respect would return to being what it always was, the natural consequence of virtue in motion. The world needs less people trying to be noticed and more people becoming remarkable. And the difference between one thing and another is in the silence, in the way you enter an environment, in the way you listen before answering, in the calm you choose when you could explode. That is where respect is born, not in grandiose gestures, but in the small choices that no one sees. If the invisible sought to be seen, the admired learned to see others without arrogance, to understand human flaws without judgment, to maintain one's own axis even when the world spins crooked. This is the true Stoic force, to walk with dignity without needing witnesses. And if you understood this, you have already taken the most important step, because respect is not demanded, it is emanated. And when you start to emanate it, it comes back, not as applause, but as reverent silence. A silence that says, I trust who you are. If this video made you reflect, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel. Here, each reflection is an invitation to become firmer, more lucid, and more free. And tell me, which of these 7 levels do you believe you are now? Your answer may be the starting point for the next step.